Thank you for joining us. I'm reporter Christine Byers, and I am joined today by Five on Your Side's legal analyst, retired federal judge Nannette Baker, and SLU professor of law Anders Walker. And we're here to discuss the rapidly developing changes going on in the St. Louis Circuit Attorney's Office today. A stunning announcement by Kim Gardner that she is resigning effective immediately today. Now, that is not at all what was planned for today. What was planned for today was supposed to be a hearing at 1:30 regarding the Missouri Attorney General's effort to remove her from office effective immediately. And instead, right about 2 hours before that occurred, she sent an email to the governor. And it was pretty concise, and it said, "To be clear, my resignation is effective immediately. As a result, I no longer serve as the circuit attorney of the city of St. Louis." And again, that was a very sudden and stunning development. And just wanted to kind of take a moment to talk to you all about what you make of how abrupt all of this was. Judge, we'll start with you first.
Thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here. I was not actually surprised that she decided to resign because the hearing was, of course, to have her leave immediately, but she had also filed some motions to quash the subpoena for her school records as well as to stay the discovery in the case. And I think perhaps upon analysis, she understood that though she may not have been able to prevail on those, and if she wasn't able to prevail on that, then she didn't have a lot of options at that point. So I think that's why it wasn't completely surprising to me that she decided to step down at this time. She had already decided to step down. It just would have been 2 weeks from now. So perhaps just not having to go forward with providing that information that the Attorney General was looking for, this was a better option.
Gotcha. And Professor, what are your thoughts about the suddenness of this announcement?
Well, I think Bailey has just pursued this like a bulldog and not given Gardner any breaks, and so she may have said enough. I was going to try and help the transition, but I'm out. I'm done. If you're going to treat me like this, I'm just going to leave.
Now, as part of the announcement today that was also unexpected, reporters were suddenly told to gather outside Gardner's office at the courthouse to meet with St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell's staff members. And in a public statement, Kim Gardner said she had been working with Wesley Bell, the St. Louis County prosecutor, of course, to ensure a smooth transition and that there was a plan in place. And that press conference never happened. Wesley Bell's spokesman came out of Gardner's office and told reporters essentially, "We're awaiting to hear from the governor and the presiding judge whether or not we have the authority to step in at this time and work on these cases." And so that apparently never came as well. And so then we proceeded over to the court hearing. What are your thoughts about this effort that was underway behind the scenes to put St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell in charge during the transition? I mean, the law is pretty clear on what's supposed to occur here. Am I right?
Yes, the law states that the governor, I guess it is really a bit confusing, honestly, because Wesley Bell is the prosecutor for St. Louis County, and the prosecutor for the city resides in the city, is elected by the voters of the city. So I was a little bit confused about how this could even possibly take place. And it is the governor who has the authority to appoint the next prosecutor. So I am not sure what the plan was today in attempting to make an announcement about Wesley Bell taking over that office.
Professor, your thoughts?
Well, apparently some people in the county said not so fast. Bell is our prosecutor. He's committed to county cases, not city cases. He can't do two jobs at once. So maybe Bell said, okay, fine, I was going to try and help, but if you're going to make a big deal out of it, we'll find somebody else. And so now the governor's got to find another name.
Now, I got to tell you, it was a bit awkward to see the county prosecutor's spokesman come out of the city prosecutor's office today. And here's a little bit of what Chris King had to tell reporters outside that office.
But her unexpected resignation has put us in kind of a gray area. So we're waiting to hear from the governor and or the presiding judge as to who has authority over the office. We're here, we're ready to work, but we're not sure what our legal standing is.
Now, shortly after that, the governor then called a press conference at about 3:30 this afternoon, at which time he simply stated that he is moving ahead with what the law tells him to do, which is name an appointment. But in the meantime, in these next 48 hours or so, he has put the Attorney General's office in charge of running sort of the day-to-day operations, and he put his Deputy Attorney General in charge, Bill Corrigan. He's a retired judge as well, and he was also the lead attorney on the lawsuit to remove Gardner from office. And so we talked to our political editor, Mark Maxwell, spoke to the governor, and here's a little bit of what the governor had to say.
Nothing has changed in our plans other than she resigned today, which just implements that we're going to move that plan forward to what we're doing. So we've been reaching out to a lot of people over the last week or so. We've met with the chief of police, we've met with the sheriff, we've met with the mayor on multiple times. We've done to be able to do that. We've met with the court systems, we've met with the U.S. prosecutor, we met with our own Attorney General's office to see how this is going to unfold when this day comes. Because we know that the attorney or the office there, the prosecutor's office, is definitely going to need some major changes when somebody walks in there. So the main thing we want to make sure is we have the resources available for whoever that pick is, that we can do that on day one.
Now, of course, all eyes are on who is going to be the governor's appointment. What do you think is important for this person coming in to do?
I'll let you go.
Well, I think they're going to have to reestablish relationships with the police, and they're going to have to start to figure out what's going to happen to Gardner's people. There are some people still left in the office. Are they also going to have to go? Will people come back to the office? Maybe some prosecutors, Natalia Gerkowitz, will come back. And that could be good if they can get experienced prosecutors in there, the sooner the better. And then, of course, there are a lot of SLU law students who could be hired and trained tomorrow. Graduation is actually tomorrow night.
Judge, what are your thoughts on what priorities this person needs to set coming in, and what kind of person needs to have this job right now?
I think it would be great if the person had some experience, especially as a prosecutor, perhaps in the circuit attorney's office, but definitely someone who has that type of experience. I think also they have to be a good leader, and they definitely have to be able to hire and hire quickly some very qualified lawyers to take over these cases. I have spoken with some of my former colleagues who are on the circuit bench, and it's a dire situation there. They are just not moving cases. There are a lot of cases languishing, as we know, and so the sooner you can get experienced people in who can take on some of those cases, I think it's going to be really important. I agree that reestablishing relationships with law enforcement is also very important, but it's going to be a heavy lift for whoever takes it over.
Absolutely. I did speak with the Attorney General just moments ago, sort of about, okay, you've got 48 hours where you are in charge of this office. What are the priorities? And here's a little bit about what he had to tell me this afternoon.
Today is a major win for the people of the city of St. Louis and this entire region to restore the rule of law and find justice for victims. And we're never going to stop fighting to achieve that objective. And we want whoever the governor appoints to be successful and have assets ready in place now to assist with that.
And part of the reaction that has gone on today, too, is some regional prosecutors voicing their desire to help out in this situation. There was a statement that was issued, and it said, the St. Louis regional prosecutors have been in communication and have pledged to work together in a collaborative effort to assist the governor's appointee in a regional effort to pitch in and provide expertise and legal advice in any manner that we can. And so the Attorney General also told me that his priorities coming in for his deputy is basically to start going through warrant applications when officers come in. Officers are still making arrests. Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the very important duties of the prosecutor's office is, of course, to issue those warrants. So that seems to be the focus for the next 48 hours at least, is getting those warrants issued. Another thing I asked him about was this controversial exclusion list. I said, what about the officers that have been banned from doing that for years, and there's been no public explanation as to why? And he simply told me the Attorney General's office does not have an exclusion list. So that is likely gone. What are your thoughts about, sort of triaging and making warrants the priority? Do you think that's the right move?
Well, they obviously, if there are situations, if there are crimes occurring, yes, the warrants will have to be reviewed. Those cases have to be reviewed. So yes, that should be a priority. I mean, obviously the person who's going to be there for 48 hours isn't going to be able to hire new attorneys. There will probably, the cases that are in the courts will probably be stayed, if nothing else, or there will be some delays until there's a new prosecutor in. So, so at this point, that does seem to be the smart move would be to be looking at the cases that are coming in. We don't know what will be happening in the next 48 hours, but to make sure that police officers are able to bring their cases and people are there to review them to determine whether warrants should be issued.
And what are your thoughts?
I think that's right. I think whoever comes in is probably going to press pause and get some people hired and start things going, but it's not going to happen tonight. Attorney General Bailey can get to work right away. He's been eager to get going at the job, but it's going to take a while to get going, so we're just going to have to be patient.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, I said this in the 6 o'clock newscast today. I said, the Missouri Attorney General woke up this morning and he probably had no idea that by the end of the day, he would be running the Circuit Attorney's office, and arguably neither did Kim Gardner, apparently. She was thinking that this transition plan she had in place with Wesley Bell was going to be what would occur, and that sort of went up in flames. From the legal perspective and the judicial perspective, what kind of, there are cases still pending. There are cases assigned to prosecutors who no longer work there. What happens to those trials? What happens to those cases in the next coming weeks? This is unprecedented.
It's going to be very difficult, especially if you don't, my understanding is that there are maybe around 20 assistant circuit attorneys working, and there are thousands of backlogged cases. And what I have heard is that basically the lawyers come in and they just ask for a continuance. And some of these cases have been pending for 5 years or more, and it's I will tell you this, it is frustrating for the court to not to be able to move these cases. It's also unfair to the victims in these cases, as well as to people who have been accused of these crimes. You may have defendants who have been sitting in detention for 3, 4, 5 years, and perhaps they'll go to trial and not even be convicted. Where's the justice there? So there is a real problem, and as soon as they can get attorneys in to start moving these cases, it will be good. I have heard that right now the court is hearing 1 to 2 felony cases a week, and that is just nothing. 1 to 2 felony trials a week. When I was a circuit judge there, we would have, there could be 10 felony trials going on in a week. Sometimes as a judge, you would try 2 felony cases in a week. Cases were ready to go to trial, and we got them done. And now that's just not happening. And with the backlog, that cannot be workable to have that few cases going through. So it's going to take some time, because when new attorneys come in, they have to get up to speed on the cases. Just because you have a new circuit attorney there doesn't mean the case is going to be ready to go in a week. It still will take some time for them to review the evidence, to talk to witnesses, and to prepare for trial.
One of the outstanding issues is the fact that there is a contempt hearing still pending against Kim Gardner. So the resignation happened today, sure, but there are still things pending, still more to come. Professor, what do you think is the best move for her right now as it relates to this contempt hearing? I mean, the judge has not canceled that.
Well, I think she should maybe just say, look, I'm out. And what's the point of holding a contempt hearing now? I think she probably wants to save her license. She doesn't want any more disciplinary actions. She doesn't want things piling up. And I think now's the time for everybody to thank Kim Gardner for stepping down. If she had hung in there and barricaded herself in the office, a bill was coming to the governor's desk that was going to strip the circuit attorney's office of jurisdiction. She prevented that from happening. I don't think that bill's going to go forward. So I think the prosecutor's office has been saved. It's going to keep going as a elected position. And so everyone should just be patient and let everyone know it's going to take some time.
Judge, if this contempt hearing does proceed, is her law license in jeopardy?
If she is held in contempt, her law license is not necessarily in jeopardy. It would depend on what is found if she is found in contempt. One of the issues that she may have is that someone may try to attack her law license anyway, and so yes, that could be the first step. But you can be held in contempt and not have to worry about whether or not your law license is in jeopardy.
Because one of the things she has said is that she plans to run for election in November of 24. She's not rescinded that statement, and so it is possible for her to run for re-election as long as she still has a bar license.
Yes, it would be.
So, she also has supporters, and we're going to hear now from one of her supporters, the Reverend Darrell Gray, and he spoke today about the resignation as well.
We talked about qualifications, what we thought the qualifications should be. We thought that it should be somebody who was not polarizing. We made it very clear, should somebody who has a knowledge, a historical knowledge and a cultural knowledge of this community. We stressed that we thought it should be an African American. We didn't think it should be anybody who's already announced that they're going to run. And so I think that based upon all the concerns that we have, I believe the governor shares those concerns.
Now, the Reverend brought up a point that has been a very contentious point in all of this, and that is race. How important do you think it is that this interim also be black?
I don't think that race really does matter in this case. I think it should be someone with the requisite experience. I think that, there's several things that I'm sure the governor is looking at. Whether the person, what the person's background is, what experience they may have as a prosecutor. Looking at the city of St. Louis, yes, I'm assuming that the governor would take into consideration racial considerations because Kim Gardner was a black prosecutor. I also think that you have to just look at a person's leadership ability, who they can bring to the table, and who the community can trust. So we've had white prosecutors before. We've had a black prosecutor. I think you just have to find the person who's going to best represent the people of St. Louis. I don't think that race should be the defining factor when it comes to making this choice.
Professor, your thoughts on the importance of race here when it comes to appointing the replacement?
Well, the people of St. Louis are going to vote. Did Bailey overstep here? Did he get too aggressive? Gardner may be able to spin this and say, look, I was ousted from that office unfairly, and her narrative has been that there's been a conspiracy against her. Mm-hmm. And how's this going to play with voters? So certainly voters might say, well, this white guy from Jefferson City came in and kicked out Kim Gardner. We want her back. And so she might come back. And the Supreme Court is probably not going to touch her law license because she has played ball and she has stepped down, and so there's nothing left for Bailey to do now other than get the job done.
Gotcha. And politically speaking here too, Mayor Tashara Jones also issued a statement reacting to the news today, and it said that the mayor and the governor agreed that restoring faith in this office is critical to a functional criminal justice system. She also reemphasized that the appointment should serve as a caretaker for the office who can make much needed changes without the distraction of re-election politics in 2024. And we know that through some of our reporting, we have confirmed that some of the people that are up for consideration are in fact wanting to run for this office. And so the question has come up, well, how can you manage this office in crisis and manage a campaign at the same time? How important do you think it is, knowing what's involved in running this office, to have this person not be trying to manage a campaign at the same time, or does it matter?
Well, it hasn't mattered before. Prosecutors, people who have served as prosecutors have also, in fact, everyone who has served as a prosecutor up until this point has generally been a candidate for office unless they have decided it was their last term. So that is, I don't think that's unusual, and I think the right person could do both of those things. And I also think that if it's someone who has the true desire to serve as a prosecutor, to be elected as a prosecutor, I think that they would look toward more of a future, as opposed to just the caretaker position. How would you want this office to run? What types of reforms you might want to put in place, that sort of thing. So I think it cuts both ways. I mean, you could have someone who's just there as a caretaker to get lawyers in, to kind of get the ship running smoothly, and then hand it off. But I don't think that it's a disadvantage for it to be someone who is running for office, because that's what they've all done in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is your reaction to the caretaker characterization as well? What do you think? Do you think that's an accurate way to explain what's needed in this moment?
Well, what we've seen over the past 6 months is every decision the prosecutor makes is running for office. So whether the prosecutor successfully prosecutes a case, misses somebody who gets out on bond and then causes an accident, everything is very political. And they don't really have to go knocking on doors to get votes. People are looking very closely at every decision, every crime, and so all of that is going to reflect how the voters feel about somebody. So whoever's campaigning probably won't spend a lot of time pamphleteering. They're just going to be doing the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to open it up to you both also with final parting thoughts here on all of the developments that have happened today, what this means for our city going forward, and just in general.
Well, I think it closes a chapter. We have now at least a resolution to Kim Gardner's position, and I agree with the professor regarding the fact that it has potentially taken that legislation off of the table regarding taking over control of the office, and I think that's really important for the people of the city of St. Louis. Now we go forward. Someone hopefully will be in the office at least for an interim period starting on Friday, someone who is very qualified. Of the people who have been mentioned who have applied for the position, there are a lot of very well qualified people on that list. So hopefully a well qualified person will be appointed and have the opportunity to, as we've been saying, right the ship and get us going in the right direction. But people will need to be patient. This is not going to be smooth sailing. There will be some hiccups. It doesn't matter who it is. It's not just going to be, we'll turn a switch and everything's okay. There are still going to be delays in cases. There's still going to be, the efforts to build up the office, to regain trust. So there's a lot going forward.
Absolutely. Parting thoughts, Professor?
Well, this may be something that happens in a lot of cities. So Gardner came in with a reform agenda, and the question might be not whether she was or was not incompetent, but whether reform can really happen in a prosecutorial position. Prosecutors prosecute cases. They work with police. That's what they do. Can you really change the whole system from that seat without having a huge political backlash, including one from the state? So every blue city and every red state might see something similar. Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Portland might all be going through this very soon because reform may not work in this particular instance. And
to be fair too, in interviews I've done with former staffers of hers that have left the office, and even some that are still in that office, a lot of them joined that office because they liked hearing that there was a reform-minded prosecutor coming in. They were into that, and once they got there, that was not what was happening. And so many of them left. Many of them felt like the job was not getting done as promised. And so, there is that factor to consider here as well. I don't think St. Louis has seen a reform prosecutor just yet.
I actually agree with you. I think, unfortunately, while she talked a lot about reform, I don't think we actually saw the policies or saw anything put in practice. And what has happened now with all of these delays is basically the opposite of reform. You know, people being held in detention for much longer periods of time because the prosecutor's not able, the cases are not able to get moved. So I can understand the frustration of people who have been in that, who were in that office for that purpose. Unfortunately, I just never saw the actual reform proposals put in place, and I think that that's an unfortunate part of this whole story.
Well, thank you again so much to our panel for joining us, and thank you, viewers, for staying with us and listening to this very important analysis on these major developments for our region. And I'm Christine Byers, 5 on your side.